just to kind of give a little lift, we're going to do a couple things with this. So you can either like roll up a towel or a blanket. I'll give you a second to get that, and then we'll meet at our mats. We're going to start with a little bit of some breath work like we usually do to kind of center in. This is going to be kind of a slower moving class than last time. And we're going to be focusing on kind of some lower back love, because I felt like that kind of last time we focused on the core, and this time I felt like my lower back, I've been really feeling it. And I know, especially as students with sitting all the time and on the computer, that can be really, really hard on the lower back. So I just kind of wanted to really quickly explain that when we are in a seated position, something like this, if you think about it, these are called your hip flexors, which kind of start from like your hip bone, kind of come down, and it's what flexes your leg up towards your chest here. And so when we're seated, when we're driving, or we're sitting in a desk chair, those muscles tend to get in like what's called a really shortened position. So they get almost like stuck really, really short. And then when you go to stand up, the pelvis kind of rolls forward, which causes a lot of pain in the lower back. So kind of thinking about the body as the opposite moving from like the front and the back, as in if something's short on the front, like we've kind of talked about with the shoulders, like shoulder blades being rolled in, usually the front muscles are really short and tight, and then the back muscles tend to be what we feel the pain in, but are actually kind of almost strapped like a rubber band and long. So tonight we're going to work on kind of opening up the hip area, and then that should hopefully alleviate the lower back. But just kind of thinking about that relationship as we're kind of moving through stuff today, the relationship between the hip flexor here and the lower back. And with that, just really moving mindfully into twists and out of twists, and making sure that if you're feeling any kind of pinching in the lower back, back out a little bit, ease up a little bit. This should feel alleviating to your lower back, not where you're trying to stretch it further. So just kind of thinking about the play between the hip flexors, the front of the leg and the front of the hip, and then just kind of how does that relate, or how does that feel to the lower back, because they're kind of counterbalancing each other all the time. So I just kind of wanted to explain that, because I think it's really important just to kind of understand a little bit, you know, even if you don't know the names of muscles, just kind of why are we stretching our front of our legs? Why are we stretching our hip flexors? And how is that going to alleviate pain in the lower back? So yeah, thank you for listening. So we'll find our way. If you found your towel or your blanket, you can move it towards your mat. We're going to start on our backs. And make sure you guys can see me. Okay, I'm gonna pin my video actually so I can just see myself, because I wanna look at myself. No, I'm just kidding. I just wanna make sure you guys can see me. Pin that video. Okay, great. So we're gonna start on our backs. You can either start with your knees bent with the feet flat on the floor, or if you'd like, you can put your legs out straight, whatever feels good to you. And we'll place one palm on the belly, one palm on the chest here. And just kind of just finding yourself in this space, and just starting to just kind of feel the mat kind of meet your body here, slowing yourself down. And just kind of, as you took your shoes off and you rolled out your mat today, and as you kind of took off anything else, just kind of allowing the rest of the day to just kind of fall by the wayside. Any tasks that you need to do, they'll be there when you get done with this hour. And just kind of turning within, slowing down a little bit, becoming aware of your breath, the fact that you're actually breathing, how neat is that? And that's just kind of what makes the breath such this anchoring point, because whether we even notice that we're breathing or not, it happens. So if you find your mind wandering tonight, like most of us, because we're human and that's what our brain
Hey Silas, I'm not sure if it's just me, but it sounds like for Shaw, so the sound is not.
Filling the chest up. Can you hear me?
Now we can. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You guys couldn't hear me?
Yeah, it cut
Okay.
out for me for a little bit, but now it seems back.
Okay, great. So just finding the breath again, centering in. If it feels good to close the eyes, and then lengthening the breath. So filling the belly full of air, and then maybe even bringing it up into the chest. And then everything out. Heavy body onto the floor. And then bringing the breath back in, elongating it a little bit more maybe this time. Allowing the shoulders to fall back on the exhale down to the ground, shoulder blades heavy to the ground. And then we'll begin to count with 5 in and then holding at the top, and then 5 out and holding for a second at the bottom, which we've done before. So inhaling through the belly, 1, 2, 3, into the chest, 4, 5, hold at the top, full of breath. Exhale out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Finding the pause on the exhale. Inhaling through the belly, 1, 2, 3, 4, into the chest, 5, holding full of potential. And exhaling out the chest, 1, 2, 3, out the belly, 4, all the breath out, 5, holding out the breath. Pause, inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, holding up the top. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Taking 3 more rounds on your own and counting into 5, holding at the top. When you come to your last one, bringing your hands out to the side of you, keeping the knees bent. And we're gonna do some small articulations of just the sacrum this time. Usually we go up into a bridge, but we're not this time. So we're gonna engage the belly towards the spine, and then we're gonna roll the hips back, and the tailbone kind of moves up towards the ceiling. Belly comes flat, and then that should kind of flatten that little space in the lower back there. And then rolling the hips forward, tailbone moves down towards the ground. So rotation of the hips here. It's very subtle. And then that kind of creates a little rainbow arc in the back. And then engaging the belly back towards the spine again. Tailbone lifts up towards the ceiling, pressing that or with the back. And then I will marry it with the breath here. So inhale, shifting the tailbone towards the ground. And then exhale, belly moves in. And we're rolling on our sacrum. So rolling back and forth on the sacrum. Inhale, tailbone moves down, arcing of the lower back. And then exhale, flattening that lower back to the ground. It should feel nice and alleviating. And 2 more. Inhale. Tailbone moves down, arcing the lower back. Exhale. Last one. Inhale. And exhale. Great. And then keeping the belly, the abdominals engaged. So by doing that, just kind of flattening that lower back to the ground, that's kind of the engaged position for the abdominals. Then bring the left leg up, keep that knee bent. So left leg just comes, the left knee comes right over those hips again. And then right knee is gonna come up. If this feels too much, if you feel like your lower back is peeling off the ground and you can't keep it down, then the modified position is to just bring your toes on the balls of your feet here and just stay like this and really engage that belly. Both are working. So whatever feels good to you, either pointed toes resting on the ground or knees up and not over the belly button, right? Because then you're not really feeling it in the core and the abdominals. See if you can bring the knees out away from you a little bit, and then you'll feel the kind of the abdominals turning on here. Couple breaths here, just kind of getting the abdominals working. See if you can stay with those big, deep inhales, big, deep exhales. Notice how the breath wants to shorten when we kind of have some tension going on. Can you keep it long? One more deep inhale. Deep exhale. Grab and give yourself a bear hug around your shins. Roll back and forth, maybe in some circles. Circles the other way. Great, bring the feet down to the ground, nice and slow. Bring the feet together, keep the knees bent, and then bring the palms of the feet together. And we're gonna slowly, you can also use your hands on the outside of your thighs, let your knees fall open for like a butterfly pose. Resting here for a couple breaths, just kind of allowing the knees to just fall down and away from each other, moving closer towards the ground. Relaxing the upper body, relaxing the chest. Allow the jaw to kind of slack open a little bit. Come back to that breath again. Full inhale into the belly. Full inhale into the chest. Finding that pause. Full exhale. One more just like that. Elongating the breath. Take your hands to the outside of your thighs. Give yourself a little help to bring your legs back together nice and slowly, keeping the abdominals engaged here. Bring the root down through that left foot. So the left foot is really going to be grounded, still with that knee bent. And then we're going to straighten the right leg and bring it right overhead here, right above the hip, sorry. Great, straighten that leg as much as possible. If you need to, you can bend it, no worries at all, okay? And then you're gonna clasp behind that right leg, straighten as much as possible, and then bring that right leg towards your head, okay? And then try not to be rolling really, try not to be straining in the shoulders. See if you can keep the shoulders back towards the ground, right? And then kind of just pulling it a little bit, coaxing the leg a little bit closer. And then rotating the foot around. So rotating the toes, rotating the ankle here. This should feel really good. And I feel it on the front of my leg. Like I said, I went boogie boarding for like the first time today. So I had flippers on. And wow, that really works the front of your foot and leg. So this feels amazing. So fun though. And breathing here. Great. Keeping rooted through the left foot, allow the right knee to come outside as if it's falling down towards your right armpit, as if it would reach the ground. So bend the knee a lot, bend that right knee a lot. Reach with the right hand and clasp the outside of the right foot. And then coax the knee down towards the ground as if it would touch right outside your right armpit here. Keeping that belly a little bit engaged at always, right? Just to protect that lower back. Coming back to the breath. You kind of move the leg a little bit around too in tiny little circles, that right leg if you want to. One more breath. And exhale. And then cross the right leg over that bent left knee as if we're going to set up for the kind of modified pigeon pose or figure 4 pose, but we're not. Okay. So right leg crosses just and sits right over that left knee. Press into the left foot and scoot your whole body just an inch over to the right. So press into the left foot, scoot your body to the right a little bit. Perfect. And then allow that whole thing to fall to the left. So with the legs still crossed over, allow both legs to fall over to the left. Right arm extends out, palm open. Both palms are open and in a T position. Breathing into that, seeing if you can bring the breath all the way up into that chest area, opening up those ribs, and then maybe looking over that right shoulder, rotating the head and looking towards that right palm. A couple breaths here. Thinking about letting that lower back go a little bit. And then rooting through the left hand, you can press your left arm into the ground and help yourself roll back to center. Bring both feet planted on the ground with the knees bent again, and then windshield wiper the knees back and forth. So just allowing the knees to fall side to side. Great. And then we're going for the other side. So really rooting down first through that right foot and that right leg, right? That's going to help sturdy us and steady us as we bring the left leg up, 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 and straighten as much as possible, or as much as feels good for you and your hamstrings. And that's all going to depend on where you're at today. So just stay within your own range here. And then if you like to, clasp behind with the hands behind the left thigh, right on those hamstrings. Relax the shoulders to the ground, relax the lower back to the ground, stay rooted through that right foot, and then gently pull the leg towards your head. And breathe. I also do massage therapy, and I feel like that most of my job is just reminding people to breathe. They're like, thanks for reminding me to breathe. I'm like, don't worry, it's not just you. I have to remind myself too all the time. And then rotate the foot, that left foot, wiggle the toes, wiggle the foot, wiggle the ankle, take it in some circles, and then take it in some opposite circles. One more breath here. And then allow that left knee to fall out towards, as if it was going to fall towards the ground and touch the ground right outside your left armpit. Left arm reaches up, reaches towards the outside of the left foot or the left shin. Wherever you can grab is great. And then you're just coaxing it down towards the ground, that left knee towards the ground. Stay rooted through the right foot. There's a tendency as we kind of get up into stretches to kind of not pay attention to the other our other grounding parts of our body. So remember that the right foot is supporting us here. Belly is still a little engaged. Thinking about that lower back, letting it go to the ground, releasing the lower back, breathing deeply into the low back. One more breath. Exhale, bringing that left foot towards the right knee. Arms out in a T, palms facing up, and then step into that right foot, shift your whole body just an inch to the left. So just scooch on your whole mat to the left, and then allow the knees to fall to the right. Oh, that feels so good. Seeing if you can keep the left arm rooted down to the ground, and as if the left shoulder, if it could, maybe it stays planted to the ground as well. It stays open. It's okay if it doesn't touch the ground, but just kind of energetically, even just thinking about that left shoulder staying to the ground instead of peeling up. If you'd like to, you can look over to the left, over that left palm. And as you breathe here, I think that we think of breath in the front of our body, but remember that our ribs wrap all the way around the back of our body, and so do our lungs and our diaphragm. It's three-dimensional. So see if you can imagine bringing the breath into the back of the body, the back of the spine, the lower back area, really breathing deeply into that. And notice how it feels to try to bring the breath up. It's a little harder when we're twisted up like this. Great, root to the right hand. Press the right hand and right shoulder into the ground. Use your abs to bring you, twist to the middle, bring everything to the middle. Feet come down to the ground. Great, bring your hands around the shins again. Give yourself a big hug. And then start to rock and roll up. So we're just kind of rolling our spine, keeping the spine rounded, clasping behind the back of the legs. Just kind of taking a few rock and rolls here. Remember to be mindful of your body and where you're at today. And remember that only round things roll. You got to keep it rounded. One more. Great, coming up to a seated position. Legs are crossed in a seated position here. And this is a great time to grab that towel or that blanket, and we'll place it right on our mat. And we're gonna sit just right up on the edge of it. So not actually right on top, but scooch your sit bones to the very, very edge of that mat, which is gonna kind of rock your hips forward a little bit, or should possibly rock your hips a little bit forward here, okay? Cross your legs, it doesn't matter which leg is in front of you. Sitting up nice and tall. So nice tall spine. And then we're gonna twist to the right. So twisting to the right, right hand comes behind us, left hand comes and places gently on the right thigh. Keeping the length in the spine, so making sure not to fall back into that right hand, right? The right hand's just kind of guiding us back there. But we're holding ourselves up with our spine and with our abs here. Relaxing the right lower ribs down. So not allowing them to kind of puncture out, but just relaxing them down. Send the breath into the chest. What does it feel like to be in a twisted position and sending the breath up into the chest again? Maybe looking over the right shoulder. One more breath. On an inhale, come to center, going for the other side. So twisting to the left, left arm comes behind as a little prop. right arm, right hand comes to left thigh, and then gently twisting to the left. Remembering to be mindful of your lower back, so we're not wrenching into the lower back. We're not trying to pull ourselves with our arms only. Nice and tall spine, looking over the left shoulder if you'd like. Keeping the shoulders out of the ears. Once again, sending the breath high into the chest here. Great, coming back to center. And then taking the legs, you can take them out wide for a second, and then we're gonna take the right leg and it's just gonna come in towards the left, and then the left leg is gonna come in towards the right. So they're not actually like crossing over each other. Both legs are actually sitting on the ground here, okay? Great, and then we're gonna sit nice and tall. You're gonna sit forward on that bolster, so your hips are already kind of rolling forward, right? Which is already asking us to lean forward. So keeping the chest open and the collarbones wide, you're gonna walk your hands out forward in front of you, okay? So before we start rounding, see if you can find the length from the very bottom of your tailbone all the way through the crown of your head here. And we're kind of coming forward, leaning forward. And then when you reach your maximum, then round and come into your little cocoon. Can you keep your tailbone rooted on the ground as you lean forward? Maybe you play around with coming out of it a little bit so that you can keep rooted with the tailbone and your sits bones being rooted onto the floor. Taking a few breaths here. One more deep inhale, exhale. Great, and then coming back up and then switching the legs. So left leg is gonna come towards the right thigh in as far as you can. Right foot is gonna come towards the left shin here. Sitting up nice and tall on our blankets. The hips kind of rolling forward, so kind of coming to the edge of that. Finding the length, walking the hands out in front of you, folding forward. One long line. And we actually have one fascial line, literally, that comes from the very front of our face all the way down around the skull, down the neck, all the way down the spine, all the way actually to our feet, the back of our feet. But this is really opening up that back line, body line. One more breath here. Great. Inhale, walking the hands back up to the center. You can move your prop aside, but just keep it somewhere close because we will use this again soon. Coming up to all fours position or a tabletop position, which we come into a lot. We're gonna warm those wrists up. So bring the wrists, usually our knees are right over, our hips are right over our knees. We're gonna shift back a little bit and bring our hands a little closer to our knees, spread those fingers wide, and then shift forwards and back. Go gentle on yourself though. If you haven't done wrist stretches, this can be pretty intense. So just take it as far as feels good to you, shifting back and forth. The toes can be curled under. That way you kind of have a little more control to shift your body weight around, and then take it in circles. So taking our upper body in circles, 2 circles one way, 2 circles the other way. Perfect. Bring the palms facing up towards the sky and fingertips facing each other. Okay, so fingertips are facing each other, palms are facing up towards the sky, and then we're shifting our weight back and forth. So the hands are still in the same spot that they were, and now we're just shifting side to side. So it should be kind of opening up the front of the hand and those extensors on the wrist. If you'd like, you can go in little circles here. Bring your thumbs in towards the center. See if you can, because it's pretty hard. And then see if you can clasp your thumb with your fingers. Can you be in this position, and are you able to actually close your hands around your thumb and then shift back and forth? Ooh, so tricky. Great. And then undo the hands again. Bring the wrists, bring the fingertips towards the knees this time. So wrists are facing out away from you, fingertips facing towards you. Be really gentle with this one. And then shift backwards onto your feet again. So back and forth with this one. One more time, a couple more. I think it's really important to warm the wrists up. This is one of the body parts in yoga that tends to get injured pretty easily because we're on our wrists a lot. So I think it's really important to start with a good wrist warm up before you go into any other kind of pose. So great. And then coming back to all fours. So make sure that your knees are directly under your hips, and then your shoulders are right over your hands here. Spread those fingers nice and wide. We're going to take some cat and cows. So we're going to inhale, and we're going to drop the belly and open the heart. Head looks up, tailbone's moving up towards the ceiling. And then exhale, belly and navel, or navel comes in towards the spine, rounding the spine, looking down between the legs, and tailbone is tucking. So a couple of those on your own breath, remembering to let the breath move the movement. So let the breath inform the movement. And exhale, rounding the spine. So I'm going to let you take a couple of those on your own. You can even kind of bring it in some circles if you'd like. Maybe you bring the right shoulder towards the right hip, kind of like seesaw, like making a C back and forth. Great. We're going up for our first downward dog. So, but before we do, make sure that you look down at your hands, and are your fingertips spread wide. You're really going to press into, especially the thumb and the pointer finger, right, to protect our wrists a little bit. And then our toes are going to curl under if they're not already. And then you're going to keep the knees bent, and you're going to send those hips up high, high, high. So send the hips up as high as you can, and then press back with your hands. Allow the head to come in between the arms here, and really pressing firmly with the hands to root. And our navel is still really engaged, okay? And that's how you're gonna get the movement in here. And then pedal the feet out, back and forth. So alternate which knee is bending and which leg is straightening. Oh. Great. And then walk your hands slowly towards your feet. Keep your knees super bent here. Feet are about hip width apart. And if you don't know how far hip width apart is, because a lot of us think our hips are wider than they are, you can take your fists, two fists next to each other, and put them between your feet. And that's usually about hip width apart. So if you're questioning that, keeping the knees super bent, letting the upper body drape over. Allow the neck to go too. Sometimes there's a tendency to hold the neck up. Allow the neck to go. Oh, taking a full inhale. Exhale through the mouth. Oh. One more full inhale and another exhale through the mouth. Clasping opposite elbows. Nod the head, maybe yes. Maybe shake the head no. Swing the body side to side gently. Great, walk the hands back out to a plank position. So hands are really rooted here. And then we're on the balls of our feet. You can look back and make sure that your heel is right over your toes. We're zipping up the midline here. And then we're really pressing the ground away from us. So not just allowing the shoulders to just kind of dump, right? So we're pressing the ground away from us, engaging that core, tightening up the back legs. So back legs are strong and lifted towards the ceiling. Holding for a couple breaths here. If you need to, you just put your knees back down here, and that's great too. This is modified plank. Both are great options. If you haven't lowered your knees, you're gonna lower your knees now. So come down to your knees first, knees, chest, and chin. So knees, and then the elbows stay really close to the side body, little back bend here. So as you come down really slowly, your chest and chin, and then the last thing to come down are the legs. Keeping the hands right below the shoulders here. Elbows are tucked in. And before we come up, get your shoulders out of your ears. I don't know about you, but I always notice that like my shoulders are creeping up. So before we come up into this, take your shoulder blades, your scapula, and tuck them as if you were going to tuck them in your back pocket, okay? That's going to roll back the shoulders, right? And then engage press the feet into the floor, press the pelvis into the floor, and then lift, okay? And only as far as feels good. And once you feel it in your lower back, come down a little bit, okay? And then really light with the hands. So as if you could lift your hands up. And exhale, take a cheek to the mat. Doesn't matter what side. Take a second. We're going to come back up for that again. So roll the shoulder blades down into the pockets. Press the feet, tops of the feet into the mat. The glutes fire up. Press the pelvis in and then roll up. So we're trying to get the rolling up almost from the upper back. That's our least mobile part of the spine, is that thoracic, that mid back area. So we're just kind of asking for mobility here, like, hey, open up. You got this. And then if you'd like to, you can take your feet off the ground, hover the feet off the ground, engage the glutes here for strong. And then maybe, if this feels good, great. If not, maybe you can even put your hands out for a Superman. So palms are facing down and lifting up off the ground. And then exhale, lower the cheek, the opposite cheek to the ground. Take a second here. Great, place the hands back down towards the shoulders and spread the knees wide, press back for a child's pose. So as wide as the knees want to go, and then sitting back on your feet, child's pose. Taking a second to just really tap in with your breath again, what brought you here. Allowing that low back to just really release down. Tailbones working down towards the ground. Great. Shifting forward, we're going to come into a downward facing dog. So you can come to tabletop position to get yourself set again if you want to. Spread the fingertips wide, pressing in, curl the toes, send those hips high, 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 and press back with the hands. Get those shoulders out of your ears, shoulder blades down, or I guess up in this case, but as if you were moving your shoulder blades back into your back pocket and together. Great. Lifting the right leg up and up, up, up. So that three-legged dog, keeping that right hip down, which I know we've worked on before, as if you have balloons on those heels. So that's really going to engage the glute here. Great. And then you're going to shift forward on that left foot. So on the ball of the left foot, and the right leg is going to come, the right foot is going to come to the outside of the right hand. Okay. And if you need to, place your right foot down wherever you can get it, as far up as you can get it. And then take your right hand and help, give yourself a little help. Get that right foot up. So you want the right foot kind of level with, about in the same vicinity as your hands, okay? So it's a pretty deep lunge, or called a lizard lunge. And I'll turn so you guys can see this. So however you can get that right foot to the outside of the right hand, okay? And then at any point, drop the left knee, okay? So you don't have to keep that left leg lifted. You're gonna get just as much out of it. It's just a little bit different of a stretch. But if you want to, drop that left knee way back, okay? And then we're going to be here for a little bit, or for a couple of minutes here. So make sure that you're comfortable. If this is enough and you're getting enough in that left hip flexor, I don't know about you, but I am so tight in my hip flexors. I can feel this already being just up like this, however you can get comfortable. Make sure that you look down and that your right knee should be right over that right ankle. Okay. You don't want it too far forward or back. That'll protect that right knee for you. And then if you'd like to, you can bring it down to maybe your forearms or not. So breathing into this one, this is a pose of release. This is a pose of asking for us to just let go, to release, to really receive this pose. And I notice for me, it's one of those poses that I'm like, as soon as I get into, I'm like, I want to get out of this. So, which is it's just interesting, and the greatest thing about yoga is just getting to know ourselves better, and getting curious about who we are and what makes us tick, because our main job is to just be ourselves, and to be you. My therapist is always like, your main job is to be you. So really breathing into that left hip. Maybe you lift the back leg up if you want to try that out. See what that feels like. You can always come back down and let that left knee back down. How can you find the release here? And notice where your mind is. Where does your mind go when you have to slow it down a lot like this? Okay, curl those left toes, so the back leg, curl those toes under, okay? Pick up that left thigh off the ground, so really strong back leg lifting up towards the ceiling here. And then you're gonna step that right foot back to meet the left, okay? However you can do that. Right foot meets the left. Now we're in a plank pose again, pressing away from the ground. Exhale, drop the knees, chest, chin. Keep the elbows close in to your sides. And you know where we're going. We're going up for that low cobra. Rolling the shoulder blades back. Inhale. Exhale. We're going to press it back to downward facing dog. Pedal those feet out. Great. Look between your hands and walk your feet up to meet your hands here. Forward fold, bend the knees a lot. Inhale, a halfway lift or flat back position. Place the hands on the shin or on the floor. And really extending out from your hips here. Long spine. Shoulders rolled back again into those back pockets. Exhale, forward fold. Grab your towel or your blanket, place it right behind your heels here, okay? Just right behind the heels. You're gonna take your feet wider than usual, okay, pretty wide. And then you'll put the your heels onto the blanket, okay? You don't have to use the blanket if you don't want to, and if you feel like you have enough flexibility in your ankles to do a squat, then no worries. This is just gonna make it a little bit easier. So keeping the knees really bent, and then we're just gonna sit down into a squat position, okay? So I can get a little closer for you guys so you can see, but I have my heels just up onto the blanket, and then knees are going wide, feet are wide. So wider, way wider than hip width apart, okay? Nice and wide hips here. And then see if you can go from rounded spine, can you bring the spine up, and then can you press your hands together, kind of in a prayer position, and the outside of my, the outside of my arm is pressing into the inner thighs on each side. So that's gonna cause a little bit more openness in the thighs here on those internal, the internal parts of the thigh here, or the adductors is what the name of them is. And then maybe you shift back and forth, side to side. Hip mobility is super important. Allow the lower back to drop here. Keep the chest lifted and breathe. You got this. Maybe you shift back and forth a little bit on your feet. One more breath. Great. Exhale. And then straightening the legs nice and slow, removing that bolster. We're still in a forward fold. Bring the feet back to about hip width apart. Remember, you can put the fist down to kind of judge that. Great, bend the knees a lot. Place your hands on the ground. Step it back to downward facing dog. And then lifting that left leg high, high, high. For a three-legged dog, keeping that left hip down, engaging the glute, send it high, and then shift forward on that right foot and get that left foot to the outside of your left palm. So if you need to, just you can just take your left hand and clasp your ankle and bring your left foot right where it needs to be. No shame in that at all. Great, so we're in a really wide lunge here, and the left foot is on the outside of both of our hands here. And then when you're ready, drop that back right knee. Take a minute to kind of really get grounded here. That left knee, that front knee should be right over that left ankle, right? Great, and then working our way to down as far as you can go. So maybe you bring it to forearms, maybe not. Listen to your body here. And notice if maybe one side is different than the other. I notice one of my hips is way tighter than the other hip. Relaxing the face here. Keeping the belly a little engaged here though. There's still some engagement going on. And almost kind of a scissoring motion with, it's hard to explain, but kind of as if there's an energetic kind of scissoring from the right leg to the left leg, as if you were going to kind of scissor them together. Like if they were off the mat right now and you were floating, they would scissor together, like come together. So there is kind of an energetic pulling opposite direction, if that kind of makes sense. They're both kind of pulling towards the midline. Really subtle. Coming back up to the hands here. Really breathing through the hands, and then you're gonna send that back leg up towards the sky. So up onto the toes here. Really strong upper body, and then send that left leg back to meet the right for a plank or modified plank. And then lower the knees, go wide with the knees. We're coming to a child's pose. Just for a second here. Shift forward onto tabletop. Bring your little bolster, your little mat, and bring it to so it's near you, so you don't have to lower it too much. So set it up near your right hip, okay? So we're in our tabletop position. We're rolling our toes under. We're going back up for a downward facing dog, okay? Press it back, hips high. Send that right foot high again. And then this time, you're gonna shift forward on that left foot, just like we did on the ball of the left foot. And this time we're setting up for pigeon, or a modified kind of pigeon. And we're gonna bring our right, how do I explain this? Sorry. The right shin down to the ground. So it's kind of crossed. So the right leg is gonna come up, and then you're gonna lay the hip down onto the ground. So you kind of want it in a 90-degree angle. It's really hard to get it in a 90-degree angle, so it's totally fine if the knee comes in a little bit. There's no problem with that. The only thing that I really want you to concentrate on, though, is that right foot moving back towards the shin here. That's gonna protect that right leg, okay? And then not leaning too far over to the right or the left. So trying to keep the hips balanced, which right now, you're gonna grab that bolster that you have, okay? And I have a lot, if your right hip is on the ground, then you don't need the bolster, but like most of us, there usually is space here. So what I want you to do is take your blanket or your towel, and however many folds you need to get it, so that you get it right under that right glute, and you're giving yourself a little bit of support, okay? That's gonna keep the hips a little bit even. So tuck that blanket right underneath that right butt cheek there, or the glutes, sorry. And then the left leg is out long behind us, okay? Not curled under, so just completely long and straight out, right? Our right foot is moving up towards our right shin to protect that right knee. Great. This is already intense right here, okay? Where we are right now, I know that we've done some figure 4 stretches before in the past. Where we are right now is about where you would be if you were laying down. So think about it. If we were in a laying down position, this is already pretty close to our chest. So I just want you to recognize that. Sometimes we think, oh, we're not doing very much because I'm up on my hands, right? If this feels good, stay here, right? This is already, like I said, pretty intense, and we're opening up that right glute area. And then if you'd like to, maybe you walk your hands out in front of you and you go to your forearms, if that feels good. If you'd like to bring it to the next bus stop, you can bring your arms way out in front of you and lay your head to the ground. But only if that feels good for you. Relaxing that lower back. Let that lower back go. Breathe deeply. Like I said, where does your mind go when it gets challenging like this? Can you stay with it? Can you stay in it a little bit longer than maybe you think you could? If at any point you need to get out of this, the easiest way to get out of this is to roll to the right. So roll onto your blanket if you need to get out of it. Well, we're going to hold it for a couple more minutes, but just so that you know, the easiest way to get out is just roll to the right, sit on that right butt cheek, and then kind of roll yourself out of it. So that's kind of the easiest way to get out. But see if you can breathe here. This is also a pose of surrender too. Stay here if this feels good. If you'd like to, you can walk your hands back close to you. And then arch back. So you're almost getting a back bend here. One more breath. Great. To come out of this, literally just roll onto your right bottom, and then bring your legs out in front of you and shake them out for a minute. Move the prop over to your left side, because we're going to go for the other side. Shake your legs out for a second. Whew, that one always gets me. Give yourself a little love here. And then we're gonna come up to all fours again and press up to downward facing dog. We're gonna go right into the other side. So left leg lifts up high, high, high. We're gonna shift forward on those right toes to send our body forward. And then left leg is gonna come up and lay the left shin onto the ground here, kind of in a 90-degree angle, okay? Like I said, it doesn't have to be 90 degrees. If you need to, you can crawl that back foot back a little bit too. So you can kind of lift up and kind of crawl it back to get a little bit more intensity in that right hip. And then left leg is coming, or left foot is moving up towards that left shin. And then we're gonna prop ourselves up. So really take the prop. There is no shame in using props. Props are so good and helpful. And actually it helps us sometimes really be able to really relax and get into the pose. And as I said, this is a pose of surrender, so it should be somewhat relaxing here. So prop up that little left butt, pew, a little prop, keeping the arms straight up if you'd like to. This is great, like I said, if we're here, or maybe you bring it down to your forearms or arms way out in front of you, up to you. Head to the ground, surrender. Check in with where you're at with no judgment, just noticing. Notice if one side maybe brings up a different feeling. Letting that low back go. Full breaths. Maybe you walk your hands back close to you onto the fingertips, blades back, looking up and back, almost like a back bend here. Ah. Great, and then to get out of this, rolling to the left side. So just kind of sitting onto that blanket, bringing the feet out in front of you. Shaking them out. Sitting up tall, reaching for the feet. So either reaching towards the shin or the feet, keeping the legs straight. And forward fold. One more breath here. And exhale, coming down to our back for our final resting pose. Shavasana, our favorite. Knees can either be bent, whatever feels good, with the feet flat on the ground, or maybe you even go for the Baddha Konasana, the one that we did in the beginning with the feet together and the legs wide with the knees bent, or just straight out, legs straight out, up to you. Whatever feels comforting to you. And we'll just be here for a minute. Bend your knees and roll to one side in the fetal position on whatever side feels good. I'm just taking a second here before you move to sit up.
Just thank yourself for showing up. And for knowing that you showed up for not only you, but everybody here, and for me, for the whole community. So thank you for that. Thank yourself for getting here. I know you all have so many obligations and stuff being in school, and just knowing that you made it here on your mat tonight. That self-love it's a process, it's just a showing up each time. Just give yourself a little thanks here for showing up. And then pressing yourself up nice and slowly.
Meeting in a seated position. Staying inward. Bringing the hands together at heart center if you'd like. And if it feels right to you, bowing your head towards your fingertips. Honoring the best part that lives in you and me and the teachers and the lineage of teachers that have come before and that will come after. And thank you to this practice and all that it's done for me in my life. And thank you for letting me share with you. Namaste, bowing forward. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Sorry if I ran over a couple minutes, but thank you so much for joining me. I just always just so appreciate teaching with you guys, and it just feels so good to be in community. I always leave feeling that way, so thank you. Yeah, does anybody have any questions or comments or anything?